welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be testing Grand Theft Auto 5, the Legacy Edition. There's now an Enhanced Edition and Legacy Edition. Enhanced Edition has the PS5 upgrades. I'm going to be testing it on an i7 2600k. I think it's like 2011 CPU, so that's about 14 years ago. So it's a very old system. It's overclocked to 4.4 gigahertz. And it's a 4-core 8-thread CPU running on a DP67BG, which is an Intel motherboard. And let me tell you, this motherboard has a lot of issues. So if you ever run across an Intel motherboard and you want to use it for old system, don't get the other motherboard, because this motherboard specifically has issues pertaining to GPU support and legacy VBIOS support and stuff. Okay, and as for RAM, it's 32GB DDR3, so that's the memory. Yeah, it's just more verification on the GPU. It's a Alpida GDDR5 memory, 4 gigs, well 3.5, however you want to debate that situation. And it's running in PCI Express 2.0 16x. So that's how it's running at this point, and I have a slight overclock on it with a power limit boost to 125, plus 40 on the core and 60 on the memory. Reason being, just a little bit won't hurt, especially in these days. Now, as for the rig details, we have Windows 11 Pro version 10 point whatever this number is. I think it's like 24H2, this Windows 11, with the game ready driver 572.060 released this year. So it's quite amazing they still support the GTX 970 as with drivers. I do think they will not be supporting it for very long, but it's amazing that it's still supported. Now, as for the monitor, we have a 1440 by 900p, so it's a 900p monitor. And I'll be using some scaling techniques to get a 1080p resolution in GTA 5. So let's just jump into and see how well the legacy version works. And then I'm going to jump to the enhanced version and see if it's still usable on this old system. Okay, now remember, you need to disable Spectre and Meltdown patches, and that's only if you want extra performance and aren't concerned about local security on this side. And you will gain a little bit performance here. I think maybe 10 to 20% depending on the situation. Another thing is to go into your NVIDIA settings if you use NVIDIA, and disable this NVIDIA overlay and game filters and photo mode. This will also give you an extra 10-20% performance. So you're talking about between 20 and 40% extra performance in this situation. So I do think it's important to just state this as well, especially for old systems. Okay, so we are in Grand Theft Auto now, the Legacy Edition, and as you can see, I've got advanced graphics all off except frame scaling at 1.5. The reason being, it is at 720p, but it's gonna run at 1080p with a 1.5 scale. Now, as you can see, we have got MSAA 8x, VSync off, and then population density max, population variety max, distance scaling max, everything else on very high or ultra if it can go to ultra, MSAA reflections 8x, and yeah, tessellation very high. Everything is basically on its max. But at advanced graphics, I'm not extending these because this is getting heavy on the CPU. Now, one thing you need to know is I'm recording locally on the system, so this means recording actually has an impact on performance as well. I will, however, at the end of the video show numbers without the recording so you can see FPS. So let's just jump in here. This is around 40 FPS on max settings. It is maxing out the GPU almost. But I do think it's CPU limited due to me recording. But it's still playable, and this is on a 14-year-old CPU, mind you. And let's just get some averages as well. Whoops. And it is indeed maxing out the CPU quite a lot because of the recording as well. Usually when I don't record stuff, it would get a little bit higher FPS, like maybe like 20 FPS more. Okay, that's it for this. Let's jump to lower GPU settings, just so we can get a more accurate gauge on the CPU, what's actually limiting it here. I'm gonna reduce the MSA to 2x. And I'm gonna try and turn off some settings a little bit, just so we can get the gauge on performance, what's limiting it. I do think we can change this without restarting. Yes. Reflections, high. MSA 4. Let's do Desolation on high. Okay, let's jump back into the game. As you can see, we're almost getting 60 FPS now. And we're definitely not GPU limited anymore. As you can see, it's only using around 80% of the GPU, 70 to 80%. So now it's purely CPU limited due to the recording. Wow. Always hard to drive between pedestrians, especially here. Oops. Okay, so that's it for basically this performance here. Okay. I'm gonna jump onto online for the legacy version as well. Okay, here we are in GTA Online. And like I said before, we're still CPU limited in this case because of the recording. But as you can see, it's also still playable on this 14-year-old CPU, i7 2600k. However, you'll need to overclock it a little bit. And it is using quite a bunch of, quite a lot of RAM, I'd say, like 13 gigs. There's nothing else open on the computer except the game and the recording software. Almost crashed again. It performs quite similarly to the story mode, but this is still because of the CPU bottleneck in this case, because as you can see the GPU is only utilized 70%. And now the issue here is actually when playing the game without recording, the CPU, the GTA Online will be more CPU limited than the story mode. The story mode should get around 80 to 90 FPS, whereas the online mode gets around 50 to 60 FPS. So there's a CPU drop. I'll have the accurate numbers showcased right now. Okay, so here's the benchmark without the software recording. So this will be increased performance for story mode and GTA Online. So we have the story mode benchmark. Now in the story mode, the GPU usage always were above 90%. It seems the CPU has no bottleneck or only a slight bottleneck there. So the average frame rate is 81.5 FPS, the minimum frame rate is 66.1 and maximum frame rate 105. As for the 1% low frame rates, 60 FPS and 0.1% lows of 55 FPS. Now for GTA Online, here we have 80 to 90% usage on the GPU, so there is definitely a CPU bottleneck. And the average frame rate is almost 62 at 61.2 FPS, and 1% low frame rate is 44 FPS, and the 0.1% lows are 38 or 39 FPS, you could say. Okay, so now we're in GTA Enhanced Edition, GTA 5 Enhanced Edition. Here we are in the settings, and now you can see we have an issue where the GTX 970 on the highest settings, this is at 720p, runs out of VRAM, so that's a new issue. So I just said ignore suggested limits and see how it's going to do as well. So I'm running 720p at this time. In video reflex, everything is off. I can't do ray tracing because there's no ray tracing support for this old card, obviously. Now, anti-aliasing is TAA, and basically everything is on max settings, very high. Anastrophic filtering is 16x. Particle quality, okay, this one can go high or whatever, but I'm gonna leave it at normal. Because otherwise I need to restart the game and it's just one effect. Well, tessellation very high, water quality ultra, grass quality ultra, which is nice about what is nice about GTA 5 Enhanced Edition is most of these settings, if you change them, you don't need to restart the game, so that's pretty cool. But I found that changing particle quality, I think, makes you want to restart a game again. So as you can see, lighting, we have ultra, reflection quality ultra, shadow quality very high, can't go higher than very high. Soft shadows softest, long shadows off. I didn't do any of the long shadows and scaling stuff like the previous Legacy Edition, where it is in the advanced drop-down settings. Extended shadow distance, like you see, it's not extended. And yeah, ambient occlusion is SSD. I don't know what technology that is. The first time I've seen this, I'm usually see HBAO. But I set it on that. I don't think it is a major difference, but hey. There's a population density, population variety, and distance scaling is all on max. High detail streaming when flying is on. No extended distance scaling. Now, what I want to do is just get us on 1080p frame scaling. There we go. Sampling, we're gonna go 1.5 times 720p. That should be 1080p resolution. So we are running out of VRAM here by a gig almost. So let's just jump and see if there's any big stutters and stuff. Now this is still, it is recording on the system itself, so it still has a performance impact. This is now the Enhanced Edition. There's a lot of stuff they added. One thing I noticed with the updated graphics is the textures are slightly higher quality. Now, it's not obviously on the onset, but if you look closely, you'll find that the textures are high quality. What I'm wondering is, do the buildings have indoor view? Okay, there's no indoor viewing, like in what you've seen in like GTA San Andreas. Let me just see if there's any other places I can look for it. Doesn't seem to be here. But hey, it's still playable. It's stuttering a lot more, but I'll have accurate numbers and I'll tell you later on if it actually stutters while not recording, because it's actually impressive to have this game still playable on a 14-year-old CPU with a, I think it's like 11 or 12-year-old graphics card at this point. And it's recording. That's what's making it crazy. And this is 1080p resolution as well. So it's recording while playing the game as well. So that's pretty impressive. But it feels a little bit stuttery. But I'll record back with the accurate numbers when not recording. And I'll tell you if it also stutters at that point. Okay, that's it for the story mode. Now here we are on GTA Online in the Enhanced Edition. And still playable, it seems. However, I do think this side of things are going to have a lot more CPU performance impact, especially if you increase like the distance scaling and everything like that. But it's still playable, crazily enough, on an i7 2600k as well as a GTX 970. Now you can also see that the GPU is being utilized more, even though there is a CPU bottleneck, so that's one thing to note as well. But I'll drop into I'll get the accurate numbers right now, and then we'll see how it actually performs and if the CPU is also still bottlenecking this amount without recording. But it does seem okay enough to play, even if you want to record like footage. Yes, it drops quite low, but I mean, what do you expect? This thing is like 14 years old, which in itself is crazy that it's still actually playing. Okay, now it's dropping below 30, 29, 28. So I'll report back with the numbers and we'll see. Okay, so this is the GTA Enhanced Edition, not the Legacy Edition. Benchmarks without software recording, so this will help with the performance, obviously. So it seems that there's still a CPU bottleneck with the story mode, but not as much. So it's in the high 80s to 90s in usage on the GPU side, with the average frame rate being 70.3 and the 1% lows of 32 and 0.1% lows of 15 FPS. 1% lows are 32, almost 33. Now, what I could say is it's still stuttery, but it's less stuttery than when recording. So it's not too bad, it's still playable, you can use it. However, it's more stuttery than the Legacy Edition, in my opinion. Now, as for the online experience, there's definitely a CPU bottleneck with the GPU usage usually in around 70s to 80s. You might have some scenarios where it goes up to 90, but mostly in the 70s. And this is with the i7 2600k and the GTX 970. Now, the average frame rate was 54.8 FPS. And 1% lows were 29.9 and the 0.1% lows were 16 FPS. So definitely it's the CPU is even holding back such an old GPU in this scenario. However, it's still in playable territory considering we're running at high settings on 14-year-old and 12-year-old hardware. So this is definitely still a very good experience, all things considered. Okay, so now I'm back in GTA Enhanced, the GTA 5 Enhanced Edition, and I reduced some of these graphics. As you can see, we are using FSR quality on 720p. Yes, that's very low. I'm purely looking for CPU performance here. With let's just see, we have everything on normal. There's a few settings that I added to be a little bit more higher, like shadow quality, reflection, and grass. I think that's it. So the rest is default minimum settings. So we can see a CPU bottlenecked scenario where the GPU is bottlenecked by the CPU. And let's just look at performance. Now this is still recording, so as you can see, we're getting into the 60s. We are getting into the 60s here, dropping to 50s. Now this is whilst recording. I'll have accurate numbers yet again at the end of this. where I test without recording and get some performance metrics here. Because you'd be amazed how much impact recording a video on such an old system has. It has a very big impact sometimes. The stuttering is quite bad whilst recording, but I'll report back if it's bad after testing it without recording. And this is of course the story mode. Okay, let's just jump into testing then, shall we? See you in a flash. Okay, so I tested the enhanced edition without recording, of course. On low settings, basically, I showed you all the settings, and CPU utilization seems better compared to the Legacy edition. What I mean by that is it's actually using more of the CPU to get the frame rate and whatever. So what I mean by that is if you look back in GTA Legacy edition, usually the i7 couldn't hit above like 70%, maybe like 70-75% usage. Now I'm not saying usage of CPU impacts the performance as much, but it seems to be a little bit more multi-threaded in my opinion. Now it still stutters, however it stutters not as much as when recording, but the 1% lows are definitely worse than the Legacy edition. If you look at the Legacy edition, we got in GTA story mode we got like 1% lows of 60, where in the enhanced edition my 1% lows are in the 30s, so it's literally like a 20 to 25, maybe 30 FPS drop. Now the average frame rate was 81.5 FPS, so it can still get the average FPS as high as the Legacy edition. However, it's 1% lows of 35 and 0.1% lows of 12 shows that it stutters more, definitely. So it's still playable in my opinion, but you're gonna see there's a little bit more stutter. Now, there's maybe some settings you could tune to get less stutter, or maybe just lock the FPS to 60 FPS and it would be less stuttery. However, hey, this is 14-year-old hardware we're talking about, and this is a PS5 enhanced edition game. So you can't complain that it still works, and you're still able to use the Legacy edition as well. So if the stuttering annoys you too much, you can just go back to the Legacy edition, or you can enjoy both editions however you want. Well, thank you for watching this video, and let me know what other games I should test. Maybe like Spider-Man 2 next time. I'll try and test Spider-Man 2 on this old hardware. I know it has AVX2 requirements, but there's a workaround for that, so I'm gonna check that out. Well, thank you for watching this video, and remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.